please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hello and welcome to Big Deal. I'm Nisha Podar and with me is my colleague Ekta Batra. Ekta, what a long transaction and the long haul transaction that we've seen in Fortis Healthcare, but there is still a lot to unfold even though the board has taken its final decision.
Yes, absolutely, Nisha. I think this story still has not ended. But just to reiterate, the board of Fortis Healthcare has finally announced the Munjal-Burman consortium as the preferred buyer, wrapping up a hotly conducted bidding war that saw binding offers from as many as 4 entities. But Nisha, take us through the contours. All right. So it is basically of upfront payment because of which the certainty as well as the liquidity which really came in with this particular transaction, that really sealed the deal as far as Fortis Healthcare is concerned when it comes to Munjal and Burman. So what they've really offered to pay is 1,800 crore rupees in terms of total amount that they are going to pay for Fortis Healthcare in terms of preferential allotment of equities as well as warrants. So there's a mix of both. So 1,000 odd crore rupees will be through warrants and 800 crore rupees is going to be through the equity issuance or the preferential allotment of equity. Out of that, remember that they are offering 1,050 odd crore rupees as an upfront payment, and within 4 months they can really come up with the 750 crore rupees which is remaining. So the weighted average in terms of the implied valuation of the Fortis Healthcare stock is 172 rupees per share, which remember is lower than what Malaysian company IHH had offered at 175 rupees per share. They also say that as far as RHT buyout is concerned, for that fund infusion, they would be selling off the diagnostics arm SRL through a competitive bid process, and that amount along with rights issue will really fund the buying out of RHT. This has been a very, very hotly contested really deal that we have seen, but there's lots more to be seen here, Ekta.
Yes, I think the board is probably one of the biggest issues. You did mention the immediate infusion also by the Munjals and Burmans, which stand at around 1,050 odd crores, but the Manipal TPG group had offered 2,100 crores in terms of an immediate infusion. But while the board has backed the Munjal-Burman offer, 3 independent directors nominated by shareholders are still not in favor of the deal. And we learned from sources that IHH may approach shareholders to seek support for its offer as well. Let's stay with this story. Let's stay with Fortis and hear out Brian Tempest, the director of the board of directors of Fortis Healthcare, sharing details on why the board zeroed in on the Munjal-Burman offer.
We looked at all the different binding bids from the point of view of certainty versus risk, and we looked at them from the point of view also of liquidity for the company. And as you know, we took the advice of an expert advisory committee that had got 2 eminent gentlemen that were on it, who were able to give us some good advice. We also took the advice from two financial organizations, and also we took advice from a legal organization as well. And when we took all those elements together and we evaluated the 4 binding bids that we reviewed, the one that had the majority support was the Dabur and Hero group.
Can you explain to us what a Munjal-Burman paid over the Manipal TPG?
Well, I don't intend to go through each individual bid and give the benefits of each one and versus some of the other ones. In fact, it proves it doesn't. We don't really need to get into those individual details. But in terms of the 4 that we looked at, certainly the Manipal deal was not one of the favourites.
Okay, that was Brian Tempest explaining why the board finalized on the Munjal-Burman bid. But remember, the offer is yet to be cleared by shareholders. We asked Sunil Munjal and Anand Burman about the dissent from shareholders, and here's what they said.
We believe that the shareholders will vote with us and support us all the way through.
This is clearly in the interest of the company all the people involved with the company, the employees, doctors, nurses, patients, and more importantly, from the shareholders' point of view, it is actually the best thing for the shareholders as well, because if the company starts to get better, its liquidity improves, its margins improve, its growth takes place, that is what the shareholders really want. That's how the shareholders' value gets built. We do hope that they will see merit in what our coming into Fortis' larger shareholders than we are today will bring, because we believe the entity will benefit, we believe the system will benefit, and we believe Fortis can get back to where it needs to be, being a leading healthcare provider. And our attempt would be to help build this into the finest system in Asia. And that should benefit everybody, especially the shareholders.
Of course, the shareholders will take the final decision, but the winner of the bid process is definitely Munjal and Burman combination. Now, joining us for the discussion and to take this particular matter forward and also talk about the entire consolidation in the hospitals business, we have with us Mr. J.N. Gupta, the former ED at SEBI, Pankaj Sahni, who's the CEO of Medanta, Ashok Seth, the chairman at Fortis Escorts Heart Institute and chairman Cardiology Council for Fortis Group of Hospitals. And we also have with us Shobna Kamineni, the Executive Vice Chairperson of Apollo Hospitals. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us on CNBC TV18. First to you, Mr. Gupta. Of course, we've seen various corporate governance issues in the entire transaction for Fortis Healthcare. The last one being the Fortis board itself, with 3 independent directors really dissenting, and still the board went ahead with the decision on a particular bid which the 3 independent directors were against. How do you read this, and at what point can the regulators really walk in a situation which is so full of so many issues and concerns?
Okay, I will answer the last question first. As of now, there is nothing for the regulator to get into, because it is the battle between the various shareholders. So regulator will come last if there is any issue. But then the issue is this, that the question that one asked, that is the 3 directors who were appointed as representative of Eastbridge and Jupiter Fund, if they dissented, then how this decision of the board is different from their earlier decision when they had recommended Manipal deal. Because earlier the questions were raised, and my company also has raised the question on the board competence and board's intent. Now the same question is back again, because the three new directors have dissented, as is what has been discovered from the announcement that has been made by the company. Now the situation is very clear, that all the time the board has been saying that we want to have the binding bid, we want to go ahead with the binding bid. Now the first approval was done on 27th March for the Manipal. From that, almost 45 days or 50 days have passed, and we are still nowhere into the approval of any deal. Now, if you see IHH bid, IHH had asked for 7 days of either go or no go transaction due diligence. Now, when the company can waste 50 days in all this, there was no reason why it could not have allowed those 7 days or 10 days to other bidders to go for a complete go or no go situation.
Okay, exactly, Mr. Gupta.
The other issue is that the Burman deal had 800 crore upfront advance. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Gupta, I just wanted to take that point forward.
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Mr. Gupta, my question is that...
yeah, I can hear you.
Do you think that the board should have decided to give due diligence, an equal amount of due diligence time to all bidders in order to probably come to a fair assessment then?
Yeah, that is what my point is, that if you have wasted 45 or 50 days time in all this thing, you could have very well given 7 days or 10 days time to all the 4 bidders, because ultimately in whose interest you are working. If there are 4 bidders and they can compete with each other and give the best valuation, I think there could not have been anything better for the shareholder. The second, they have not given the details of valuation parameters. I ideally would have wanted that the board should have come out that these were the 4 bids, we have evaluated them on these parameters and we found this to be the best. Or the better could have been, they could have chosen the 2 better deals among the 4, and presented both the deals to the shareholder and let them decide. Today there is a situation that you still have the old 4 board members deciding the fate of entire shareholder, and they were nominees of Religare, which is on a minuscule shareholder today. So the questions will always be raised on the intent and the competence of the board, because I would say that earlier the board has agreed for a very low valuation with Manipal. The moment some shareholder raised issue, Manipal update bid by 21%. Right. So we really do not know what is the valuation. And earlier bid, it was valued by an independent valuer, fairness opinion, audit committee. So everybody put a stamp of approval, and next day the 21% increase was there. So we have to very much doubt on the entire process.
All right, so the legitimacy of this particular board is itself under question, Mr. Gupta, and some of the shareholders have raised that. In fact, on the 22nd of May, there will be an extraordinary general meeting, and if that gets dismantled, the question will be whether the decision taken by the board against the wishes of the 3 independent directors nominated by shareholders, will it still hold? So we still have to see how this unfolds. But let me take it to the brighter side of this transaction, and let me come to another player in the hospital business, Pankaj Sahni of Medanta. Jump into the discussion. Does it give you a lot of exuberance with the fact that so many players were fighting it out? IHH, Manipal, both are now disappointed and looking to the shareholders for some support as well. So is it a very sweet spot to be in when it is calling for a consolidation in the sector?
No, I don't think I would characterize it as a sweet spot to be in. I think for us at Medanta, we have been and continue to be focused on our patients, on our work. I think if you look at it from a point of view for the industry as a whole, though, I think that there are some concerns. And the first concern is that, you know, the human side of this must be factored in. So in all this talk about M&A, shareholder value, the first and most important thing is to think about what is happening to the patients of Fortis, what is happening to the patients who are currently admitted at Fortis, what is happening to the patients that are being treated by them. So I think our first focus should be on that. The second focus should be on the doctors and the staff, right? And what happens is that uncertainty, right from the point where we have been talking about the various challenges that the organization has been going through, to the fact that there are various kinds of cases against the organization and the shareholders, and also to the fact that there was a lack of clarity on how this process would play out. That is never good for the organization, because if you don't have the staff able to have a certain amount of clarity, then that probably is bringing uncertainty, which is affecting, you know, maybe their work or affecting the way in which the organization is functioning. So I think for me, rather than look at it to say that, you know, has any of the other players benefited or not benefited, or are they happy or not happy, the focus should really be what's happening to the patients, what's happening to the staff, and how can we ensure that we bring some amount of certainty to them so that, you know, their lives and their work can continue.
Okay. Mr. Sheth, you come into this conversation because you are the chairman of Fortis Escorts Heart Institute. So you've seen the functioning of a Fortis hospital in the past couple of months while it's been embroiled in all of the uncertainty that it's seen. How exactly have operations panned out for you in the past couple of months?
Yeah, so while we've been discussing about the shareholders' benefits and all these deals, let's not forget the patient's benefit. And we always have to keep that in mind, because the patient benefits through the clinicians. And I think that equation's very important, and we must focus on those. Having said that, there's no question in my mind that lack of certainty affects daily operational functioning. It affects strategies. It affects planning, excellence over the, say, centers of excellence over the next years. And I think it affects daily functioning. So it's great that this deal has actually come to an end, and in favor of an Indian company who's shown excellence in other fields. Sure. I must say that there's surely a positivity around clinicians, around administrators, and say we know that we'd give a better quality of care to the patients as this deal materializes. Let me just emphasize on a couple of points that we may be missing out while we discuss shareholder benefits. We must remember that this is an Indian team which is devoid. The Munjal-Burman consortium is an Indian team which is devoid of any private equity strings that's attached. And for years, For the last 30 years, they have shown promise.
Sure, Mr. Sheth, that point is taken. That point is taken about the Munjals and the Burmans. What I'm trying to ask you is what kind of operational difficulty has Fortis Escorts faced, if any, due to this uncertainty that we've seen? We do understand that, you know, funds were crunched. We do understand there were some exits from top doctors as well. What were the operational inefficiencies that you might have faced?
There were no operational inefficiencies. There were operational uncertainties. And I think those have to be determined. The patient never got affected. The doctors never left. And I can say vouch for that as far as anything is concerned. It was never for the sake of the fact that there were uncertainties. But what is certain is that planning and execution for the subsequent 6 months and a year got held on because of uncertainties about the future. And that's very important. Infusion of funds into new projects certainly got held. Equipment needs to be bought. That was held on. So there are actually investments to be created into a healthcare delivery of excellence in every month and every year. And if you don't plan ahead, you just don't know what the future lies. So nothing changed for the patient. But if this carried on, it could certainly affect delivery of healthcare.
Big deal, and we've been discussing the Fortis Healthcare transaction and also its implications on the entire hospital business in the country as well, and what it means for the sector. Pankaj Sahni, coming back to you, of course, you made that point about the various issues. Help us understand how is the talent availability in this particular sector, and what, according to you, is the biggest challenge at this point? Do you think a non-strategic like probably a Burman as well as Munjal can really change the fortunes of something like Fortis Healthcare in the kind of ICU situation it is, and what are the challenges facing the industry that can really come in the way?
So I'll try to answer the first question. I think that unfortunately in India we are facing a huge shortage on talent, and that extends not only to doctors but also to nurses, to other paramedical and clinical staff. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we just don't have enough doctors in the country to meet the needs. We just don't have enough healthcare workers to meet the needs. And even those that we have are of varying qualities. So not every doctor is the same, not every nurse is the same. So for us to be able to deliver the healthcare that we want to be able to deliver at the higher standards comparable to the best in the world, there are significant challenges. And you see this every day. You see not only the private sector struggling with this, but you see the public sector also struggling with the same challenge. So I don't frankly think that whichever shareholder is in charge of Fortis or any other group is really going to solve that problem in the short run. I think that's a much more complicated problem. I think it will require a lot of focus, a lot of discussion, and will take time to solve.
Okay. Pankaj, what about the industry as a whole?
You know, whether it is
because we are seeing price control increasingly come through.
Yes. I think it's important to remember that when you look at the industry as a whole, fundamentally on all the parameters, I think the industry as a whole is still very attractive, is still very important, and is still really just in its infant stage. I mean, healthcare and healthcare delivery is really just starting in India. So there's a really long way to go. There's a huge mismatch between supply and demand, huge shortage of quality supply. So I think the prospects for the industry are very strong, are very good, and I'm very hopeful on that front. That being said, there are short-term challenges, and I do believe that the next 12 to 18 months will be severely bumpy, and there will be lots of challenges that need to be faced. Some of those challenges pertain to price regulation. Some of those challenges pertain to availability of talent. Some of those challenges pertain to the general environment in terms of the lack of trust that has unfortunately gotten developed. And some of those challenges pertain to the misinformation and incorrect perceptions that are there about what is happening in the industry today. So these challenges will remain. I think that this is something that we will have to, as an industry, see through in partnership with the government, in partnership with patients, in partnership with other stakeholders. I don't see that either going away depending on which deal is happening or who the shareholders are. In terms of your question on whether it would have made sense for a strategic partner or whether any other shareholder, Look, this is something that remains to be seen. Obviously, there are certain of the bidders for Fortis who had a track record of running hospitals. There are others who had international exposure. So this is something that remains to be seen. It's not to say that any one particular type of shareholder would have necessarily been able to be that different in terms of the fortunes of how Fortis as a group would proceed. Also, don't forget that we are still some ways away from the shareholders actually approving the deal. And no matter who comes in, there's a lot that is probably needs to be looked at in terms of the various challenges that the organization has been facing. So I think that a lot needs to be done. I don't think that you could say one way or the other definitively which shareholder would be better for the company. I mean, obviously time will tell, and we're still not fully sure on who that shareholder will be.
Right. So, yeah, of course, it still has to be decided. But Mr. Gupta, coming back to you, shareholders are going to be extremely important for this transaction to really reach its fruition. At this moment, what are the rights or any actions that the independent directors can really legitimately take for the way their dissent had not been really accepted and taken care of?
See, when this offer is being presented before the shareholders, the directors can always give their opinion. That is one. The secondly, nobody stopped them from airing their opinion in public. But I will come to the couple of important issues after listening to other speakers. One is very clearly that today Burmans have said very clearly that they are not going to be in control, they are just going to be the investors. Now the question comes that how this Fortis has come into such a big trouble, what they are saying, that liquidity problem and all these issues. Now that trouble that has been caused to them is because of the management or mismanagement or all other factors. Now Burman and Munjal's coming as a financial investor is not going to take that away. That is one. The second issue is very clearly that you don't give an aircraft to someone who is the lowest or highest bidder to fly. You need somebody who knows what is the inside of the aircraft and how to fly the aircraft. Now here it is a situation, you are saying that I am handing over the hospital or the group of hospital which is having a problem to some financial investors who do not have as much experience as any other three bidders were having. So the issue is very clearly that you cannot evaluate bid purely on the financial angle, one. And even financially, if you see, Burmans are putting 167 at first go and 175 is the second. Whereas IHH was putting 175 all throughout, and secondly, Burmans are taking warrants where they are only putting 25% up front, whereas IHH was saying 100%. So we really do not know. We want
Mr. Gupta, we've completely run out of time on the show.
Parameters on which they decided.
I just had one quick question before we end this conversation. Do you expect IHH to probably come in and make an open offer or do something in order to counter this particular bid, because their press release seemed to indicate so? Quick short answer, sir.
I do not know. I do not know, but I am 100% sure that this fight is not going to stop here, because there are already public relation manager on behalf of various bidders. They are trying to talk to the shareholders. So this battle is not going to end so soon.
Yes,
and that is bad for the shareholder, because if the company is in trouble, any prolonged thing will be bad.
All right, Mr. Gupta, in fact, that is the biggest takeaway from all the developments that has really happened at Fortis Healthcare, that this particular fight, this particular transaction is not over. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us on this discussion. And Ekta, clearly we will have many more sleepless nights and many more weekends really dedicated in this Fortis saga as well, and many more learnings to really come in as far as corporate governance is also concerned in this particular case. Luthra and Luthra may just has come up. SFIO investigation is also still underway. So lots really to see. And one big really learning for us in this particular saga as an M&A reporter has been to read the offer documents and analyze them in a matter of seconds. So that has been the biggest learning, I think, and lots more things to really analyze. So keep it with CNBC TV18, and thanks so much for tuning in on Big Deal.